The hallmark of a discovery of this kind is they didn't want it to be true. Okay, I want to talk about possibility space as the deep structure of the cosmos. And what I claim is that the fundamental structure of the cosmos is not atoms, particles, or even thoughts or minds. The fundamental structure is possibility. And possibilities underlie our whole physical and mental existence. And I'm going to talk about, in turn, physics, biology, mathematics, and thought. So, physics. What we have is the possibilities of physical stuff. And in all possible universes, there's physics which could be possible, and in this universe, there are restricted types of physics. So in this universe, we were discussing yesterday with Roger Penrose and others, possibilities of string theory, this and that and the other. In this universe, there are 4 dimensions, there are 4 forces. There's Lorentz invariance, which underlies special relativity. There's Hamiltonian dynamics, which is standard to all physical theories. And there's time evolution. And so possibility spaces for physics in this universe are determined by these specific physical laws. So those underlie what happens in this specific universe, as opposed to conceptual universes that could have been but are not. So physics possibilities are characterized by the laws of physics, and basically it's Newton's laws of motion, which governs dynamics, it's Maxwell's equations for electromagnetism, it's Einstein's equation for gravity, and it's Dirac's equation for quantum physics. And these laws, as far as we know, are unchanging and eternal. They are the same at all times and all places in the universe. And we have evidence from this from our deep astronomical observations, where we see right back to 300,000 years after the start of the universe. And we verify from that physics was basically the same then as it is now. Now, these physical forces determine what's possible and what is impossible, and that's the sense in which they determine possibilities. So, we can't travel faster than light. We can travel up to the speed of light. We can't have perpetual motion. We must obey energy and momentum conservation. And here are Maxwell's equations for electromagnetism. And this relates the electric field, the magnetic field, and the current. And these lead to the possibility of electromagnetic waves. Now, those electromagnetic waves come in different wavelengths, and the possibility of these waves underlies the existence of all kinds of eyes in biology, which take advantage of that possibility in order to see. And the same possibility of seeing via electromagnetic waves will be true in every other planet in the universe. If animals can see on any other planet, they will be detecting this radiation. Now, what about biology? Biology has got a hierarchical structure. There are the physical basis is atoms, there are molecules, then there's a basic physical level, the cell, there's tissues, there's organs, there's body systems, organisms, populations, community, ecosystems. And there is a possibility space for each level of this hierarchy. So there's possible molecules, possible cells, possible organs, body systems, and organisms. Now, at the bottom level, very, very important is proteins. And proteins have incredibly beautiful, complex structures. This is a voltage-gated ion channel, and on the left it's closed, and on the right is a view from, this is a view from the side, this is a view from the top. And these paddles open and close according to the voltage across the ion channel. And when it's open, it lets an ion go through, and when it's closed, it does not. And there is a possibility space for the foldings of these proteins, and that is the crucial thing by which molecular biology underlies macrobiology. So there's a possibility space for proteins and for the foldings of the proteins. And Andreas Wagner, this is a wonderful book which I strongly recommend to you, called Arrival of the Fittest, Solving Evolution's Greatest Puzzle. And he describes beautifully the huge possibility space for proteins. And he describes it in this way as an eternal, unchanging Platonic space of possible proteins of enormous dimension, because there's a huge number of possible proteins. There are physiological possibilities. So this is a diagram of the heart from Dennis Noble, and there are certain physical ways of pumping the blood. You have to have a certain structure, you have to have an oscillator, and it has to pump in and out, and that's based on the way the laws of physics allow blood to be pumped. There's plant and bird possibilities. Here's from Cape Town, beautiful bird and a proteo, and there are certain possible structures for birds and certain possible structures not. As a simple example, if you took that bird and scaled it up by a factor 10, it would not be able to fly because the scaling would not work. Possible space for animals. And an animal has to have certain structures, it has to be able to sense things, it has to be able to move, and so on. And the possibility for animals governs the various ways that it can sense things and the ways it can move. And there's a possibility space for humans. And I love that photograph of the interaction between the medical guy and this little girl. Now, the possibilities, biological emergence in general, there are physical possibilities which allow various biological possibilities of the kind we've been looking at, but biology brings in things which physics does not know about. But biology demands metabolism, homeostasis, reproduction, and evolution, and physics allows those to occur, but does not determine that they will occur. So these are enabled by physics, but not implied by it. New concepts are involved. The concept alive does not occur in any physics textbook. It occurs in biology textbooks. So these are emergent possibilities which are enabled by the physics, but are not implied directly by the physics because they are emergent qualities and features which are not physical features. What I had here was possibilities in general, but we're talking now, when we want to discuss life on Earth, you go from the possibilities on all planets. And so the possibilities we were just looking at, there's a possibility space for biology on any planet in the universe, but on Earth we have specific conditions. And so we get conditional possibilities for life on Earth. It has an oxygen atmosphere, unlike Venus. It has incoming solar radiation at a particular temperature. It has, and that temperature matters. It has seasons at a particular 6 months, and it has day and night. These are the contexts within which life on Earth has evolved. And so the possibilities for life on Earth are conditional possibilities dependent on these features amongst other kind of features. And so those birds and animals we looked at have adapted to these particular features of the way that life exists on Earth. So the universal biological possibilities reduce to a possibility space of biological existence on Earth, given the nature of our own particular biosphere. And on Venus or Jupiter or elsewhere, you would have a different conditional possibility space arising out of the universal possibility space. Okay, next I want to talk about mathematics. Major parts of mathematics are discovered rather than invented. So rational, irrational numbers, or the prime numbers, are discovered by mathematicians. Mathematicians have spent a huge amount of time and energy trying to characterize the way that prime numbers work. The ancient Greeks proved that irrational numbers exist. The hallmark of a discovery of this kind is they didn't want it to be true. They wanted there to only be rational numbers. They wanted the number pi to be a rational number, and they were incredibly disappointed when that wasn't so. And they were discovering, by rational argument, the nature of the possibility space of mathematical structures. These Platonic spaces of mathematics have an abstract rather than an embodied character. The same abstract quantity can be represented in many symbolic and physical ways. So the number pi can be represented in decimal, hexadecimal, binary, and so on. And so you can represent it in many ways. But the thing that you are representing is an eternal and unchanging quantity, the number pi. And when the spacecraft was sent into space, with the possibility it could be intercepted by another civilization, the number pi was written down there because that was a number which we reckoned that other people over there, if they existed, would have known about that number. So these mathematical quantities are independent of the existence and culture of human beings. They are a Platonic world of mathematical abstractions comprehended by the human mind, realized in detail of neuronal connections, and then being realized in the real world where they're causally effective. For instance, the number pi is used by engineers to design physical machines of various kinds, chemicals, plants, and so on. And so these abstract numbers become causally effective. They change outcomes in the world because of the human mind. And people who believe in Platonic spaces, Jean-Pierre Changeux and Alain Kohn, Conversations of Mind, Matter and Mathematics, Roger Penrose, The Large, the Small and the Human Mind. And I would venture to say any mathematician who has worked at a high research level knows they are exploring a space which is there. They're not inventing it. They are discovering the way that that space is. Now, the comment used to be by various philosophers, but how can a human mind learn something about such an abstract space?
To continue watching this video, click the link in the top left or in the description below. Or visit iai.tv for more debates and talks from the world's leading thinkers on today's biggest ideas.